perfect player with mezii. And movement.
ropz. Movement, ropz.
I will just go with ropz.
Movement, let's take ropz.
I really like ropz's movement.
ropz. Ropz is ropz.
Why is ropz so highly regarded for his movement? A player whose role is to do this for 90% of the round. And compared to other players like mezii, ropz isn't very flashy, nor does he have a completely distinct style like donk. And yet everybody continues to point to ropz as Counter-Strike's god player of movement. In this series, I want to highlight aspects of pro players that don't show up on the stat sheet, but elevate them to the next level. So what makes ropz's movement so effective, and what can we learn from him? Psst, hey kid. This video is sponsored by SkinsMonkey. SkinsMonkey is a 24/7 online trading service for CS2 that is extremely easy to use. You just select your skins that you want to trade, the skins that you want to trade for, and they'll send you the offer. Right now, they are offering up to a 30% bonus on your first deposit, and up to 35% if you use my code WAZOO at the top, along with an additional free $5 if you make a trade worth $100. That's a lot of free money. Check out SkinsMonkey today and use my code WAZOO. Thank you, SkinsMonkey. Let's get the elephant out of the room. ropz is a KZ god.
Oh. Ooh, that is sexy.
If you don't know, KZ or Creeds is essentially a parkour map for Counter-Strike that utilizes all the source engine quirks to test the mastery of a player's movement. These maps are tiered based on their difficulty, with tier 6 being the hardest. And as you can probably guess where I'm going with this, ropz has beaten multiple tier 6 maps. Needless to say, ropz has a pretty firm grasp on all of Counter-Strike's movement, and it definitely shows with just how smooth and easy he makes it look. However, if being mechanically great in KZ automatically translated to great practical movement in game, players like sattack would also be in the conversation for their movement, but they're not, because in almost every game, you're just going to be using clean, simple movement that gets you to your desired outcome in the fewest amount of steps possible. The skill that KZ practitioners really bring back to the base game is a great sense of spacing, which in the context of an individual player basically means how well you know how your character moves. So knowing how much distance you travel while holding down a key for X amount of time, how much you're exposed in certain angles, things like that. And while it is not the most impressive to analyze, it is a fundamental concept to understand why it sometimes feels like it is impossible to get a trade against ropz, and how he is able to get out of tight situations without a scratch. Take one of his most famous clips in CSGO against G2. He first starts by getting a kill on mezii with the porch off angle, before briefly trying to engage with Jax in the left side bracket. Although it's very unlikely that the apartment's players will try to get a peek onto him, he still plays conservatively and doesn't overcommit to the mid duel, but ropz knows that the threat of being pincered on both sides is very real, and acts fast. He drops down onto the porch, gaining cover with the pillar against mid. And once he hears the apps players drop down into pit, he knows that he also has cover against them with the truck, so he swings back towards mid and picks up the kill against Jax. Without the mid threat, ropz can now turn his full attention back to pit, where he creates separation by hiding behind the porch pillar. Alexi B attempts to get Jax's trade, but with limited health, he dies to one body shot. This puts Nico into a precarious situation where he has to worry about ropz, Kerrigan on the rotate, and now he also has to retrieve bomb. Still, Kerrigan is a bit away and cannot help ropz, so ropz, knowing that he has to deny Nico an easy isolated fight, peeks out with the deagle and one-taps him. It's this understanding of the map geometry and his own sense of spacing that allows ropz to take 4 separate 1v1s in this fight without breaking much of a sweat. But learning spacing takes experience and many hours in the game. Let's go over something that we can all copy. One of the most notable aspects of ropz's play is his absolutely tiny strafes. This is in real time. This is not sped up at all. Compared to most players, ropz's jiggles and strafe distance are incredibly short. Now normally, I advocate for making sure you build as much speed as possible before you peek to make the defender have a harder time hitting you. But here's ropz doing the opposite, so what are the benefits? Shorter strafe distances are generally better used on the defensive end, whether that be on the CT side or controlling an area as a T, which ropz does a lot of as a lurker. This is because peak speed is not as valuable as it is for the defenders as it is for the attackers, since you're not peeking anything. What's more important is being able to get an accurate shot as soon as possible so that your attacker cannot fight back. Since the shorter strafe distance builds less speed, it is also faster to counter-strafe off of, meaning that you will be ready to fight sooner when you react to an opponent. But you might be asking, wouldn't the shorter movement make it easier for attackers to re-aim at your head? Yes and no. Assuming that the attacker has perfect crosshair placement, shorter strafe distances does make it easier for your opponent to micro-adjust to your head. However, the ability to counter-strafe earlier than your opponents often means that you get the first shot in the fight, which at the pro level is often the end of the fight. Additionally, ropz will almost never play the same spot 2 rounds in a row, and will always go for small peeks and repositions to mitigate threats against strong crosshair placement. And evidently, that's enough. But what about if you're an attacker? There are many instances where ropz's short strafe distance gives his opponent an incredibly easy shot to hit, which makes his technique look ineffective. But that's if we drain all of the context of the situations that he is in. ropz is first and foremost a lurker. This means that ropz is often not the one facilitating fights and taking aim duels. Most of the time, he's waiting for contact or opportune moments to strike against a player who has their guard down. In these situations, the opponents are in a compromised position and cannot fight back, so ropz does not need the extra peak speed, and in fact, benefits greatly from peaking short as it reduces the amount of exposure he has to the fight, minimizing the risk of being traded or getting caught out by another player. But I want to go back to the point about finding the timings as an attacker, because in the macro, that plays a massive role in what makes ropz's movement so effective. It doesn't matter how well you move if you move at the wrong time. A big part of having great timings is having sharp game sense, which unfortunately is one of the hardest subjects to teach tangibly. But what we can learn from ropz is that he will take time to stop what he's doing and think about his next move mid-round. Take this round in a FACEIT game that ropz played in preparation for the 2025 Austin Major. The CTs have very minimal utility to play with ropz having none himself. As a result, ropz chooses to get aggressive into lower tons and take an early fight. Most players, when hearing "go fight," would just turn off their brain and either take a very aggressive line, or if they're playing passively, at least have their crosshair placed well to be prepared for the lower tons fight. But in this round, ropz doesn't have his crosshair up, nor even placed in a remotely productive spot. ropz's main focus is to listen to if the T's are going to run straight down into lower, or if they're rushing down cat or mid. He doesn't hear that the T's in upper are running after him, so after he dodges a potential flash, ropz doesn't bother to place his crosshair. But once he hears the T's pushing mid, ropz turns around and gets ready for the fight. Knowing that the T's in upper tons would be too slow to flank him, ropz knows that he can take a much more aggressive angle onto the second player mid, before he turns back around for the tunnels players but dies to the trade. Now, could you have good crosshair placement and play for sound? Yeah, but the question is, why bother? A big reason why players get timinged is that they lose focus after trying to be locked in for the whole duration of a match, which almost always ends up draining more mental resources than necessary. Finding small moments where you can disengage, reevaluate your situation, or even just look at your minimap will lead you to making smarter decisions in the long run. But let's combine all of these elements into one neat example. On the T-side pistol round of the FACEIT game, ropz is going to buy P250 and try to challenge mid. He ultimately doesn't find anything before he joins his teammates on cat. There's nobody on A or long, so he and flamez jump down into CT to hopefully catch off some of the rotators. While flamez challenges the B site anchor, ropz is going to take a quick second to watch in case the CT jumps down from cat, but also to reevaluate the site hold, since he already knows that CT cannot jump down from cat since apexcs is watching. So he swings out against the B site anchor and swiftly takes him out. You can also see ropz's short strafe distances here, but they won't be relevant to the success of this round. apexcs is only good for 1 on site, and now flamez and ropz will have to play retakes back onto site. They clear out any of the vertical cap positions where Tessus misses 2 critical shots onto ropz, so ropz moves towards elevator to space himself away from Tessus and to double swing the player long, before turning around and one-tapping Tessus, winning the round. And that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know if I missed anything in the comments section down below, and if you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Other than that, I'll see you guys very soon.